And even as a kid, somebody would say something. I said, "Oh, well, why don't you look at it this way?" So I have a lifetime of this, and
Yeah.
it's very sad for people to, you have half of the world. I don't know half, but lots of people who are pessimists. They just think
Yes.
everything is going to hell. There's nothing they can do about it, and I find that sad. But all I know is the way to turn around most of our misery is available to all of us. All we need to do is change our minds.
What if questioning the way that you've always done things was actually the key to unlocking a happier life? In today's episode, which is number 200 of the Move Your Mind podcast, I can't believe we made it here. If I look back, I'm shocked that I've been able to keep this going every week, that we've interviewed so many incredible people, and that I've had this opportunity to speak to so many people. But we made it, and we're going to keep going until we hit 1,000 and more. We're never going to stop. So today I chat with Dr. Ellen Langer, a psychologist known as the mother of mindfulness and the first woman to earn tenure in Harvard's psychology department. Ellen's been researching the power of mindset for over 45 years, showing how the way we think can literally transform our health, our relationships, and our overall happiness. We talk about breaking free from societal norms, embracing uncertainty, and making small shifts that can completely change how we experience life. This is one of those conversations that will leave you questioning everything in the best way. Welcome to Move Your Mind, where we uncover why you are holding yourself back from getting the life you want and what to do about it, with the help from high-achieving guests and experts in behavioural science, personal development, and the health and wellness space. Join us if you're ready to move out of your own way toward your ideal self. I'm your host, Nick Brax, and I've been working in the health and wellness space for the last 15 years, helping people find direction and gain the courage to take control of their life. My mission is simple: to help you learn everything that I wish I knew so you can become your ideal self. Lacking guidance, I spent the majority of my youth feeling lost and disempowered, which led to depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and substance abuse. Looking back, I didn't have the vocabulary to communicate what I was experiencing. And as a man, I didn't resonate with the emotional language used in traditional therapy. I didn't need to talk about my feelings. I needed tangible solutions to guide me toward building a life I was proud of. If you can relate, then this podcast is for you. In this episode, we discuss how questioning societal norms can lead to a happier, healthier life. If you're ready to take action and build a stronger mindset, then keep listening. Ellen, thank you so much for making the time to do this interview. I know how busy you must be, and especially doing it on a Saturday as well. It's very kind of you, and really excited to dive into this conversation.
And I'm looking forward to it.
Appreciate it. So I always start off in these interviews just asking if the guest can give a background on themselves and their work and how they came to be doing what they're doing today. And I think in your case, it definitely needs to be an abbreviated version because you have done so much. I don't even know where to begin in having this conversation.
Excuse me.
Oh, no problem. But yeah, like I was saying, you've done so much, I don't even know where to begin. So I guess if you can just give a background on the work you've done and what you're currently doing.
Okay. As you suggested, Nick, I can't do that because I've been doing this work for 45 years. So I know, let me just summarize essentially that for all these years, I've been studying mindfulness. And mindfulness, as I study it, has nothing to do with meditation. Meditation is a practice that results in post-meditative mindfulness. Mindfulness, as I study it, is immediate. It's just sort of a way of being. And what happens is if you realize you don't know, and I will persuade your audience of this in a few minutes, then you sit up and you pay attention. right? And so that's essentially all it is, active noticing. So if you walked out your door, wherever you are, and you notice 4 new things, all of a sudden you'd come to see you don't know the things you thought you knew as well as you thought you knew them. Now, what's interesting is this active noticing is literally and figuratively enlivening. So while you're noticing, the system is turned on, and we have years and years of research showing that it results in a longer life, better health, which I guess I should say first, better health, longer life, relationships are better, everything is better. And if you sort of imagine that you have a choice to either be there and show up or not be there, and showing up, being there, turns out has benefits that are enormous. And when you're not there, the system is slowly turning itself off. And interestingly, this work makes clear to me that virtually all of us are not there most of the time. Now, you can't just say to yourself, it's very sweet. Some people say, be in the moment, and that's great. But it's sort of an empty instruction, because when you're not there to know you're not there. So you can't change it. All right. So the way to change it is intentionally notice new things. That puts you in the present, makes you sensitive to context and perspective. As I said, the neurons are firing. It's the essence of engagement, so it feels good with all of these extra ramifications. Now, you wanted me to say something else about myself. I don't know. I've been a professor at Harvard for over 45 years. Um, and essentially, the reason I'm talking to you today is because I'm very excited about my new book. And the new book is called The Mindful Body, Thinking Our Way to Chronic Health. And the essence of it is that we have far, far more control over our health and well-being than people realize. An enormous amount of control. Let me just give you one instance having nothing to do with my research. I teach health psychology at Harvard, and I asked the students at one point, how far is it possible to run, humanly possible to run without stopping? So they know the marathon's like 26 miles. They know I wouldn't be asking the question if it were 26 miles. So it becomes like an auction. One says 28, 30, 35. They never get past 50. And the person who says 50, everybody groans, don't be ridiculous. Then I play them a video of the Tarahumara tribe in Copper Canyon, Mexico, who can run over 200 miles without stopping. So the reason I suggest this now is the difference between 26, and I couldn't run a marathon, so most people aren't running 26 miles, but at least they know it's possible. The difference between that and 200 is enormous. And that's an illustration of the enormous difference on all sorts of dimensions and where we are right now and where I think we can be. And the way to get there is essentially just changing our minds.
Wow. So it's really that linked, and I guess a lot of people talk about the link between our, how long we live for, how our health, you can think your way into having a heart attack, for example. So
Yes.
it really shows how linked our thoughts are to the physical side of things.
Yeah, people for years have, the medical model decades ago believed that the way you think, whether you're stressed, happy, is irrelevant to your health. That in order to become sick, you need the introduction of an antigen. Okay, now most physicians are well beyond that, and people talk about what they call the mind-body connection. But to speak of mind and body as connected, you have a problem. How do you get from this thought, this fuzzy thing, to something material, the body? And I say we're asking the wrong question. And it's in advance to think that they're connected, but it's more than connected. It's a single unit. The mind and body are one thing. And what that means is wherever you're putting the mind, you're necessarily putting the body. And so I have many, many studies, all reported in the Mindful Body, demonstrating this. And the very first one, some of your listeners may have heard of, it's called the counterclockwise study. I think they may have heard of it because if you watch The Simpsons Go to Havana, they talk about the study, so it's out there. But essentially, what we did was to retrofit a retreat to 20 years earlier. So the books, everything about it reeked 20 years ago. All right. We did this in 1979. And then we had elderly men live there for a week as if they were their younger selves. All right. So they spoke about the past events as if they were just unfolding right now. And they did this for just a week. And the results were amazing in some sense. Their hearing improved, their vision improved, their memory improved, their strength, and they looked noticeably younger. And so, with those
Wow.
results in hand, then over the next many years, we've done many of these sorts of studies. I can give you an example of a couple others if you're interested.
Yeah, please, please. That's,
Okay,
I mean, 'cause that's
so
that's fascinating. That's yeah.
okay, so I mean, I'm not going to have a chance to talk about all of them. Just whet people's appetites is what I'm intending. Okay, so the
Yeah.
next study in that series was done with chambermaids. So we get these chambermaids, we give them lots of measures, okay, that we take before the study begins. And it was interesting because if you ask them how much exercise are they getting, they say they're not getting exercise, but that's all they're doing all day long because they think that
Mm,
exercise is what you do after work, and after work, they're just too
yeah.
tired. Okay. So all we do, divide them in half. We take half of them and we teach them that their work is exercise. All we're intending to do is to change their minds. All right. We tell them working on this machine at the gym, is like making beds and so on. So at the end, we have
Mm,
two groups. One group believes that their work is exercise. One group doesn't realize their work is exercise. Now, what we do is, we I think we were doing this for a week or so. I'm not absolutely sure, but it doesn't matter. Um, what happens is that for those people who now saw their work as exercise, they lost weight. There was a change in waist to hip ratio, body mass index, and their blood pressure came down without doing anything different from the
oh my
other
god.
group. We found, we've wanted to find out, were they working any harder? No. Were they eating any differently? No. All that was different was their mindset. Very powerful. So let me go, I have
Gee.
so many of these, but let me go to one of the most recent. We is a study on wound healing. So we inflict a wound, a minor wound, because I'm not, you know, I don't want to hurt anybody. And even if I did, the review committee wouldn't let me. Okay. So, but it's a wound. Now, the person who just got this wound is in front of a clock. The clock is rigged. So, unbeknownst to that person, the clock is going twice as fast as real time, half as fast as real time, or real time. And the question we're asking is, will that wound heal based on so called real time, or will it heal based on perceived time, clock time? And the answer is perceived time. We have
Oh
I
my
can't tell you how
god.
much control we have over everything in our
What?
lives. I mean, blood sugar level, because I was crazy with clocks for a while. So people come in, we take all sorts of measures. We ask them to play some computer games and to change the game they're playing every 15 minutes or so. That's just to ensure that they'll look at this rigged clock. Okay. For a third of them, again, the clock is going twice as fast. For a third, half as fast. For a third, it's real time. In this study, what we were asking is, would blood sugar level, these were type 2 diabetics, would blood sugar level follow real or perceived time? And again, the answer was perceived time. Right. So
Wow.
a host of these that make clear to me the amount of control we have is enormous. If you think of fatigue, everybody believes that the body is wired, so it just has to fall apart. At some point, you have to get tired, and so on. Well,
Mm,
in the simplest version of this, we did many studies. We asked one group of people to do 100 jumping jacks and tell us when you're tired, and they get tired around 70. We take another group and we say, do 200 jumping jacks and tell us when you're tired. They get tired at 140. All right. We have, when we engage in any
Yeah.
activity, we have an implicit notion of the beginning, middle, and end, and we organize ourselves unwittingly to get tired around 2/3 of the way through it. There was a wonderful study. After I did all these studies on fatigue, I came upon one that was from the 50s or something. Frank Beach took these rats. So you take a little boy rat and you put him with a little girl rat, and they're going to copulate until the little boy rat can't take it anymore. Right? He needs a refractory period. He needs to rest because he's so fatigued. Right? Now, if instead of letting him rest, you immediately add a new little girl rat, he's ready to go right from the beginning. All right, suggesting that
Right.
fatigue is, in a sense, context dependent. You change the context, change your mind, in other words, what's going on, and you start all over again. These ideas came to me. You asked before about how I came to study what I studied, and it's interesting.
Mm.
So I have two pancreas stories. Most people don't even have one, but this is relevant to the mind body unity. I was married when I was
Yeah.
very, very young. So I'm 19 years old, and we go to Paris on a honeymoon. And I'm very grown up. I mean, after all, I'm a married woman now. So we're in this restaurant, and I order a mixed grill. And on the mixed grill is pancreas. He was more sophisticated than I at the time. And I said, okay, which of these is the pancreas? He points to something. I eat around it. I'm having a fine time. But now the moment of truth. Could I eat the pancreas? I had to, because I was a woman of the world now. I was, married after all. So I start eating it, and I literally get sick to my stomach. At which point he starts laughing. And I say, "Why are you laughing?" He said, "Because that's chicken. You ate the pancreas a while ago." And, so there
Oh my
was,
God.
and that stayed with
Yeah.
me, although I obviously didn't develop a theory at at 19. But my mind said, I will get sick if I eat this. And then I got sick, even though I was actually eating my favorite food. Another thing that was important to this mind body unity theory, um, when my mother was, I guess she was 56, she had breast cancer. And at some point, the cancer had metastasized to her pancreas. I don't know if you know, Nick, but that's the end game. All right, pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
And so everything in the hospital, family, and so on are organized around her impending death. And then magically, it was gone. This thing that was nowhere to be found in her body, and the medical world couldn't explain it. And that really was one of the major impetuses for the work I've done my entire adult life. Because the mind body unity can explain spontaneous remissions. So with this book that I keep mentioning, The Mindful Body, it started as a memoir, and so there are lots of personal stories in it, and all of this research that we've been doing, because my goal has been to get, I keep writing these books, giving these talks in the hope that people will start living. Right now, so many people are
Yeah.
sealed in
Yeah.
unlived lives. And so I guess in some sense, my goal is to help break that seal and show people what's possible. And people don't even realize, the limits they place on themselves, not just their health, but with respect to the things they can do. I'm very fond, Nick, of language. And so my ear, picks up things to which most people, are deaf. When somebody says, try, so your mother wants you to do something, just Nick, try it, okay.
Mm.
Implicitly is the expectation for failure.
Mhm.
Okay, so not trying is not as good as trying, but there's a better way of doing something. And I go through lots of these in the book. If I said to you, try to eat the ice cream cone, you'd look at me as if I was strange, right? You don't have to try, you just eat it. All right, so when you're
Yeah.
trying, you're setting yourself up, maybe I'll fail. So we did some studies, very simple. We have one group, just do it, whatever the task is. Another group, try. The doing group always outperforms the trying group. Let's take something like
Yeah.
forgiveness. So many, many years ago, I was asked to give a sermon in one of the Harvard churches. Well, I'm not religious. And if when I am more or less religious, I'm Jewish. So this being in the church was, you know, unusual for me. But I tend to say yes to everything. Okay,
Mhm.
so now I've got to write this sermon. I have no idea what to talk about. Then it comes from, well, forgiveness. That sounds sort of religious-y, and I could get away with it. So I start thinking about about forgiveness, and I end up with something that was almost sacrilegious. Here it goes. If you ask 10 people, is forgiveness good or bad? What are they going to tell you? It's good, right?
Yep.
If you ask 10 people, is blame good or bad? What are they going to tell you? It's bad.
Bad.
Okay. I don't know why it took you so long. Is it the camera or what? But okay. So essentially, forgiveness everybody thinks is good, blame everybody thinks is bad, but you can't forgive unless you first blame. So that means our forgivers are our blamers. Gets worse. Do you blame
Mm.
people for good things or bad things? Well, we tend to blame people for bad things. But things in and of
Mhm.
themselves are neither good nor bad. They're nothing until we frame it, okay, and understand it in some way. So what do we have? We have people who see the world negatively, who blame, set themselves up for the possibility of forgiveness. Hardly divine. And so in the book, I explain in lots of these things a better way. You know, blaming and not forgiving is bad. So forgiving is better than blaming, yet there's a better way, which is to understand that whatever anyone does makes sense to them from their perspective, or else they wouldn't have done it. And most people
Mm.
tend to be oblivious to multiple ways of understanding things. And so let me give an example. Um, you might not like me because I'm inconsistent. Excuse me. Um, I might not like you because you're gullible. Well, from my perspective, I'm not inconsistent.